An anonymous evil corporation purchased the trailer park next to my school and then raised the rent and evicted everyone. The residents are low income with nowhere else to go, so I took matters into my own hands to save them. My school is next to a trailer park with 250 tenants. Roughly 30% of the students at my school live there. Recently, it sold for $16.8 million. I got a call this last week from a grandparent who got an eviction notice taped to her door. The company that bought the trailer park told all tenants to pay rent through an online portal, but the portal doesn't work. This grandmother dropped off a check to pay rent, but the landlord didn't cash it. Now she thinks she's being evicted, and she's worried her grandson she has custody of will have to change schools. I looked at her lease and the notice, and told her it wasn't legal, because it wasn't served by a sheriff, and she's not on a month-to-month or rent-to-own lease. The deputy I called said it was a legal notice to quit instead, not an eviction. I traced the address of the notice to a company's P.O. box in Delaware, 8 hours away. Today, the special needs aides at work told me all of their students' parents received the same notice on their door. The new landlord is trying to force renters out so he can bulldoze the trailer park and replace it with higher occupancy apartments. It's a beautiful time of year with red leaves on the mountains and the fields are full of pumpkins. The kids at my school are hopeful every day and have no bitterness in their hearts. It is absolutely insane to me that we live on a planet that could be heaven, but the circumstances of human relations created by capitalism make it hell. Update 1. This is some Pynchon-level chaos involving professional football players and the Panama Papers. I've tried to get the help from the media, but nobody has picked it up. Maybe you guys know how to piece together what's happening? The public announcement of the sale does not include the name of who bought the trailer park for $16.8 million. The tenants are supposed to make out checks to P.O. Box 249, Englewood, NJ. So that's all we are working with. This address is linked to several trailer parks in Virginia with sewage issues and many trailers parks all across the country, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Florida. One park listed is Pinecrest MHP in CA, and a document says the legal address is the Corporation Trust Center in DE, which is listed in the Panama Papers as using the Isle of Man as a tax haven. A company using the same P.O. box, HOA2 Finance 1, LLC, also links back to the same Corporation Trust Center. The name listed as a manager for some of the parks using the same P.O. box all over is Byron Fields, with an email linked to a defunct website, ourhomesofamerica.com. There's a LinkedIn profile for Byron Fields that says he works for Homes of America, but the profile picture is of Byron Fields, Jr., who played football for Duke and signed for the Giants. Did a professional football player use a shell corporation to buy a trailer park and evict all the tenants? Can anyone find anything else? Update 2. Half the buses that take students to the elementary school where I work come from a trailer park down the road, which sold for $16 million in April. The property itself is only assessed for a little over $2 million. It was never on the market. The buyer spent over $10 million for the land and another $6 million for the buildings, buying the park directly from the family who owned and managed it. The buyer was kept off public documents. The new owner raised the rents and now, 6 months later, is evicting all the tenants. After the sale, the tenants were told to pay rent to the old name of the trailer park, plus new LLC added to the end, and a P.O. box in Englewood, NJ. The P.O. box is shared by a professional football player named Byron Fields, whose LinkedIn says he works for Homes of America. He was an intern for Alden during college. That guy is now the nominal manager of a dozen trailer parks in the U.S. bought by Homes for America. The P.O. box gets forwarded to Corporation Trust Center, where American money disappears into offshore accounts to evade taxes. Byron Fields didn't buy this trailer park. On investigation, the buyer is Thomas Del Bosco, an executive of Alden Global, who bought the trailer park under a nonprofit called Homes for America. He's also an executive of Smith Management LLC. Alden Global owns stakes in both my local paper and the bigger paper nearby, Me, who, surprise, are not covering this story. Alden Global is mentioned in the Panama Papers because it's sheltering all its money offshore. Past investors in Alden have included the Knight Foundation, a nonprofit that, ironically, funds sustainable journalism projects, pension funds for employees of Coca-Cola, Citigroup, and CalPERS, the California Public Employees Retirement Fund, as well as some nonprofit foundations and Swiss financial institutions. More than $236 million in pension funds for some digital-first media employees are invested in Alden, although the company said this year it's in the process of pulling them out. How can hedge funds operate through nonprofits? They are buying papers, ruining them by cutting the staff in half, and creating nonprofits about sustainable journalism while investing the pensions of the employees of the papers they have bought into their own hedge fund. If you have so much money, you can ruthlessly buy everything and create profit margins by casting out workers and tenants onto the streets. We need to jail hedge fund managers and slumlords, nationalize banking, and guarantee homeownership for Americans. It is frankly enraging how badly Americans are screwed over by finance capitalism. I believe these students have a sense of community at our school, and eviction will traumatize them and further impoverish their parents. A third-grade kid named something like Tiny Tony told me his dad is now working every day of the week to try and make enough to pay the hiked rent and stall off the eviction. He is so stinking cute, and he loves school. I don't want him to be swept away. Major. Edit. The money is going through Homes of America, LLC, not Homes for America, the nonprofit. Update 3. Alright, so this isn't the first time I've heard and seen the name Tom Del Bosco, nor is it the first time I've looked into it, nor is it the first time that name had been used for public affairs. And yet, it never really leads me anywhere. I think the name Tom Del Bosco is mostly used as an alias or cover-up name to help hide a person or people, or it's all hardcore scrubbing. You can look up Tom Del Bosco and you'll find random people from random parts of the world. Look up Alden Global and you'll find it's a hedge fund, that's it. No real history, no clients, no employees. But you might find that they just so happen to be the owners of several news outlets. I highly fucking doubt it's coincidence. Not the first time this has happened, and it's not going to be the last. I wouldn't even be surprised if local, state, or national news says literally nothing about this purchase and eviction of people. It's all super fucking shady, but what I do wonder now is, how did OP get this sheet of paper notifying them of who to contact and who to seek aid from? I personally don't think it was someone that they know. What I do know is that everyone in the area will leave, sooner or later, for some reason or another. Basically, if you search up Tom Del Bosco or Alden Global, all of the search results have been bogged down. You can't even find a picture of this man's face. He might have paid people to scrub him from the net. Update 4. I typed a flyer on my phone about the mass eviction happening at the trailer park where my students live. When I went to print it out at FedEx, the chick working there asked if she could share it on social media, and I said yes. I parked at my school and walked along the highway past dead deer and haunted places. I reached the park and started talking to the families that were outside or who had their cars parked in the driveway. Every single person was kind and grateful I was doing something. I had been afraid park management would bounce me because it happened to me before, but nobody has seen management in days. Things I learned. An elderly man was being evicted over $12. The mobile app they're being required to use is tacking on crazy fees. HUD, housing assistance. Vouchers are being returned to sender, and the tenants who use assistance are now in thousands of dollars of rent debt. A few days ago, the new manager left a 100-page packet on the tenants' doorsteps, outlining all the new rules that could cause the residents to incur new fines. One particularly dark rule is that everyone can only have one pet now. A man invited me into his trailer where he lives with his young son. They showed me the floor in their bathroom had collapsed. Sag. The tenants were told if they didn't pay these new fees by October 28th, they would have 3 days to move out before they would be evicted. Over half the tenants had been there less than a year, so there's high turnover. Pretty much everyone said this was the only place available immediately that they could afford. The tenants pay between $400 to $800 in rent. Some of the trailers are from the 1970s. All the notices that were eviction-related had simply been taped on people's porches. I saw how the payment app they were now being made to use didn't work and didn't have any contact information about who was managing the park. Someone showed me that they were being charged fees with dates occurring before they moved in. One woman showed me how electricity didn't work in half her trailer. 3 men I talked to worked grunt jobs at the weapons plant. One worked at Walmart. One was in construction. Only half the people I talked to were white. 3 people mentioned disabilities. In all, I was there for 3 hours and talked to a bunch of people. Surprisingly, I didn't see any of my students. I walked back down the highway after dark. I had put my number on the flyer, but nobody has called me yet. I'm going to go back on a different day at a different time and try to talk to more people. I'm exhausted, and I typed this from the bathtub. Update 5. I went back today to canvass the tenants at Massey's with new Spanish-English legal aid pamphlets and an invitation to a tenant meeting this Saturday. The lawyer handling the case now will be there, and I want to give the tenants the opportunity to meet together to discuss their options. Do they want money to leave, or do they want to stay and fight? Apparently, Homes of America lawyered up too and hired some guy literally named Grimes Creasy. Pinch on Universe? He seems to be reputable, but his frat boy son did rape someone at Ole Miss, and although he was convicted, he apparently never served a day in jail after his sentencing. The tenants I talked to today lived on the backside of the mountain. This particular hollow of trailers houses a lot of my students. Although all of the trailers in this section had received notices to quit, none of them have received formal evictions yet. This is a good sign, because today was the first of the month. If you were to look at the notices to quit, you would see that the laws the tenants were said to have been violating were all Michigan laws, so the document might not be valid at all in Virginia. I am wondering if Grimes Creasy saw what the trailer park was doing and told them they couldn't evict anyone because the notices they were putting up were complete bullshit. I canvassed for 3 hours. I met an old woman named Velvet with some type of disease that made her neck go down to a 90-degree angle. She lived with her son and a hungry beagle dog. She showed me black mold in her trailer, and she asked to give me a hug. I saw one mom living with 2 kids. She had holes in her walls and mold in her bedroom. She said her son, my student, was getting sick all the time, and she wondered if it was because of the mold. One tenant told me his mom has lived there for 30 years and was getting the notices as well. He had bought a moving truck over today just in case he had gotten the eviction notice that never came. It was sitting in his front yard, surrounded by cats. I've been fielding calls from reporters because those posts went viral. I think tonight I talked to NBC Nightly News and to a local, non-Alden paper, Cardinal News. I'm supposed to get interviewed at 8 a.m. tomorrow, but I asked different parents I met if they wanted their kids to go on the news instead. I think they would make better TV than I would. Plus, then I can keep some degree of anonymity. I keep wondering why Alden Global speculated on this particular plot of land. Is money just changing hands? Did the university drive up land valuation that much? Are they betting on double 3 and want the land because it's very close to the Radford Arsenal, where most U.S. bullets are made? Did they find coal under the trailers? I wish I was more familiar with how the fire sector functions. All I know is this hedge fund does not care about these tenants. I am grateful that organizing seems to be working. I wanted to say thanks to the user here who contacted his childhood soccer coach, a lawyer, to put me in touch personally with legal aid. I wanted to thank the user here who found a church who will host our tenants meeting and who was kind enough to stay and help the pastor fold clothes to give away. I wanted to thank everyone who donated to Southwest Virginia Legal Aid and to the users here who sent me money to print more flyers. It's moving to get this much support from people I've never met. I hope the TV interview and the tenant meeting aren't a bust. I'll have to canvass every day this week to hit all 174 tenants. I have a sinus infection, swallowing hurts, but at least I am familiar with enough tenants where I know where I can park, so I don't have to walk down the highway anymore. Update 6. I got to Massey's at 8 a.m. to meet with a TV news reporter from WDBJ7. I had Tiny Tony, TT, and his dad, a firefighter and ambulance driver, ready for the reporter to interview. They did great. When she asked him why he likes living here, he said he liked his friends and going into the woods to dig holes. I did give an interview. I have no clue how it went because I was nervous and my bangs were poofy. I went to work. TT bragged on the playground that he was going to be famous. After work, I drove back to the park to start knocking on the road next to TT's. While I was there, I got a phone call from NPR. I stood on the side of the road and explained what was going on. and while I was talking, a pickup screeched to a halt in front of me. TT was driving, on his dad's lap. LOL. He rolled the window down and asked if I needed help. I said no, I'm on the phone with a reporter, and his dad asked which reporter. I said NPR, and he then asked me what that was, while the reporter was listening on the other end. For the next 2.5 hours, TT tagged along and went door knocking. Pretty much everyone on the back half of the park received the notices to quit. We knocked on other students' doors, and they came out and followed along too. TT wanted to take me on secret paths through the park, some of which I had to pass on because they required sliding down the steep mountainside on my bottom. I knocked on one door, and there were 2 disabled people in wheelchairs, living without power. They had asked management to fix their electricity, but nobody came to help. After this, at 5:30, a Roanoke Times reporter came and I introduced him to TT and his mom. Then a very sweet stupid Polar came and helped me door knock. He's ex-Mormon and has bad memories of canvassing, but I was glad he was there because this session went really well. He can probably attest that everyone we talked to was glad to see us and excited for the meeting Saturday. In 2 days, it took 6 hours, but I've now covered half the park with legal aid info and the flyer for the upcoming tenant meeting. I don't have an agenda for the meeting yet. The legal aid lawyer will speak, and then I'll let tenants have 2 minds each to open mic their problems and ideas if they want. I might do breakout discussion groups. Since I got donations, I am going to buy a megaphone and sign and banner materials and see if the tenants want to meet us somewhere on the public roadside after the meeting is over to have a small demonstration. That's only if the meeting has enough momentum. Sorry if I'm overposting. I kind of just wanted to tell you all that TT canvassed with me and about the 2 disabled people living in darkness because the new park owner, Tom Del Bosco from Alden Global Capital, is forcing them to live in the dark. Update 7. The following is a picture of one of the trailer park residents' thoughts on what's happening. Here is a transcription. I live in Massey's and am 65, disabled and on disability. I have my grandson living with me. He is diabetic with a host of other medical problems. So the fear and anxiety I feel every minute of every day, waking in the middle of the night, only to set and worry how long will we have a place to live. I have no other family, no help, and no one to talk to. What's the use of going on when people like Massey and the new owner exists in this world only to get richer? What is you dumbass think you gonna buy your way into heaven? Listen, stupid, it doesn't work like that, and karma will get you in the end. Update 8. I spent last week canvassing for a tenant meeting at the trailer park Alden's executives just bought, Massey's. It took 15 hours total to hit all 174 units. A few of the days, I had kids following me around. Often, their houses were full of mold and holes. Some of their parents are dying. I think 20% of the park is vacant now. It's apocalyptic. There's eviction notices taped to doors, and when you peek inside the windows, there's abandoned kids' toys and mattresses. You ask a neighbor, and they will tell you the family just left in the middle of the night a few days ago. I was expecting anywhere from a dozen to 100 people. We got 58 tenants to the meeting. Some of my students were there. The meeting was in a beautiful church. Someone on this sub had coffee delivered, and the mother of a daycare student of mine brought water and power bars for the families. Legal aid sent 3 lawyers and set up a paralegal in the lobby of the church to do intake directly. One lawyer told me this subreddit donated $3,300, which, congrats, is the largest donation they've gotten over a single issue in their history. I had planned the meeting so that first legal aid would speak, and then there would be breakout discussions so tenants could meet their neighbors and discuss what they wanted to do together. This was a mistake. I should have done the discussions first, and then had legal aid talk because tenants were so frustrated and angry at the lawyers, they left. This is because the Virginia legal system is not designed in the favor of tenants. First off, lawyers can't speak directly to the issues, but they can only give an overview of tenants' rights. So people in the audience wanted to know about their leases, and we had to tell them they needed to sign up for legal aid first, which was easy enough, but some tenants were legit angry, asking, "Why am I here?" Secondly, legal aid can't do a class action lawsuit on their behalf. The system is designed to treat this collective problem as an individual concern. Thirdly, while legal aid did a good job educating them about what landlords can and cannot do, they failed to tell tenants how to pull off tenants' assertions. which is the legal way for tenants to make maintenance demands that have to be met before money can be put in escrow. Since people left before the group discussion, I didn't have the opportunity to suggest militant extra-legal actions, like a march on the park manager or a rent strike. I felt like a failure after the meeting, which was hard. But after some consideration, I think it wasn't a failure, and I felt that way because I've been so sick all week and I overworked. I met an 80-year-old Black Vietnam vet, a recent widow living in a trailer full of mold, heating himself with his oven because his heater broke. I believe he was extorted for more money than he owed, and he did pay it up to avoid eviction. I got him connected to legal aid. I met many pregnant women and young parents struggling to make rent on time. Their kids are always sick. Tiny Tony told me he wanted to pass out flyers with me, but first he had to make his mom, who just lost a leg, some easy Mac. He had the worst trailer of them all. Over the summer, they lived in a tent in the yard. The situation is grim. Here's how I know this wasn't all a failure and we did something right. Another organizer told me I had probably canvassed enough and I could stop, but me and another poster went out yesterday morning to hit the last 2 streets of houses. While we were there, we met an older Black woman, Jackie, who worked as a custodian at the hospital but had been injured on the job. She invited us in. She had been about to turn in the signed rule book to the manager because she thought she had to, and I told her that she didn't. If she had signed it, she could have been held financially responsible for painting and leveling her trailer. We connected her with legal aid over her eviction notices. She couldn't drive, so I offered to take her to the meeting. At the meeting, she ended up being able to meet with her lawyer in person. She recorded all the info the lawyers told her, and she was frustrated the tenants didn't want to talk together. At the end of the night, she gave me a hug with tears in her eyes and thanked God we had come to her door that morning. At the meeting, she and 3 other women decided they would work on a petition. Basically, a collective tenants assertion. And since I have all the tenants' contact info organized now, it will be easy to disseminate whatever they write. I'm going to offer to write certified mail for tenants who need urgent repairs and regularly start visiting the elderly there. I'm also going to take classes so I can be a foster parent. None of this will tip the scales. Best case scenario, it stopped a few dozen people from being evicted. The tenants need to take a leap and organize themselves as a community against the evictions that are going to happen anyway, because some evictions will be carried out due to failure to pay. The tenants need to have the abusive park manager removed. I understand too why some tenants were mad at what limited help the lawyers could offer them, but knowing how the system works is pretty key in fighting against it, because it might cause you to realize your fight against it needs to be extra legal. As Rosa once wrote, you don't know the weight of your chains until you start to move. Someone told me Alden has bought 400 parks, and this is the 401st. I do realize what I've seen in these past few weeks is happening all over America, not just Appalachia. I know I sound sad, and like I'm throwing pasta on a wall to see if anything sticks. I want to encourage you as Marxists or people with any ounce of compassion in your hearts to go to the mobile home parks near you and organize, try stuff I didn't try, and talk to every person, because enough quantitative organizing will cause a leap in quality. And by quality, I do mean that one day there will be a redneck revolt. It is not right that the richest men in America can extort the working poor for this much money while keeping their quality of life this terrible.